for our first hour, Congressman Alan Grayson is on the line with us, and he will be taking your calls throughout this hour. So if you have any questions, comments, or whatever, questions for Congressman Grayson, feel free to give us a call, and we will get right to it. Congressman, welcome.
Thanks. You seem to be in a good mood today.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was live tweeting the Republican debate last night, and I set it up as a drinking game, right? I'm going to take a drink every time they mention a serious issue like, health care or Social Security or, infrastructure. I had this list. And I kept throughout the night tweeting, hey, I want a drink, please, guys. And it just never happened. I mean, it was all about, how we've got to be afraid and all that. What did you think?
You were hoping it would be a sober debate, but you're the one who ended up sober.
Well, yeah, exactly. I knew it wouldn't be. I should have reversed the drinking game, but I just don't like hangovers. So
I didn't see the debate. I did see the New York Times article about the debate, which went into quite a lot of detail. And look, it's exactly the way you say. I mean, the reason why the Democrats are doing so much better in terms of the public eye at this point is because Democrats talk about real issues and real people's lives, and Republicans talk about nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's a proliferation of that. It's an extraordinary level of it. What is on your mind right now in terms of, or you can let me know. We can just start going right to calls if you'd like.
Well, I'm pleased by a couple of things. First, we introduced the first constitutional amendment against gerrymandering on Tuesday this week. And,
wow.
Sorry, on Monday this week. And on Tuesday this week, the president happened to mention that in his State of the Union speech.
Do you think that Paul Ryan will?
Coincidences that suggest to me that the issue is in the air. It's part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And that makes me hopeful that we'll make some progress on that. When we looked into it, I never expected to be the person to introduce the first constitutional amendment in history on such a thing or anything, but it turns out to be true.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that we can make some progress on that. Wednesday, this past week, was the deadline for submitting comments on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You and I have discussed that already.
Mm-hmm.
We looked a week earlier. We found that only 2,000 comments had been submitted to the trade representative. We rounded up the troops, informed people by email about this opportunity or civic duty, depending upon how you look at it, and we quadrupled that. We submitted an additional 6,000 comments on the TPP, overwhelmingly against, and I feel good about that. That's part of what we're trying to do: mobilize and organize.
That's great. That's great stuff. It is, much like with Bernie Sanders. I mean, people are just discovering him, but he has an amazingly long accomplishment or record of actual legislative accomplishments, and so do you. And it's like, it seems to me like the really genuinely progressive candidates are the people from the Progressive Caucus like yourself and Bernie actually typically get a lot more done than the Conservadems or the Republicans.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I'm going to indulge in a little bit of bragging here. In the last 3 years, I've passed more amendments than any other member of the House, even though I'm a junior member with not much seniority at all. 54 amendments in 3 years.
That's great.
And the person who held that record before me was, in fact, Bernie Sanders.
Wow.
And he wasn't a member of either party when he was in the House of Representatives.
Right. Although he was caucusing.
He wasn't a Democrat, he wasn't a Republican. He caucused with the Democrats. That's correct. But he was under an even greater disability than I was. And nevertheless, he was able to be very, very productive.
Yeah. It's a marvelous thing. So, shall we pick up some phone calls?
Sure, that's fine. Let's do that.
Okay, great.
Minds.
Chris in St. Petersburg, Florida, listening on Sirius XM. You're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Chris. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida, and I've got 3 questions for you. One, how do we get the Department of Justice down here to Florida to investigate our corrupt governor and attorney general? And second, my other question for you is, how do we help support you and the person who plans to challenge Debbie Wasserman Schultz so we can actually get some progressive voices into control in the DNC? And then my third question is, I actually am a registered Republican, and how can we get the primary process opened up here in Florida so that people can vote in either primary?
Okay, taking those in order, unless Tom wants to chime in first. Tom, do you want to say something first?
Just that Tim Canova is the guy who is challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the primary. We had him on the radio program and the TV program yesterday, and his website is Tim Canova. He's got two, timcanova.com and timcanovaforcongress.com, and it's spelled Canova. So there's just a data point for you, but the rest is yours.
Sure. Regarding investigating our governor and attorney general, that's hard to do. We from time to time we've seen investigations launched by the state's attorney in Tallahassee, which is where the state government is located. That's been dwindling over the years. The elected officials who have the relevant authority regarding prosecution are generally people who are Republicans because of gerrymandering and other reasons, the power of big money throughout the state. The attorney general would have some independent authority, but she's just as bad as the governor in most people's opinion. And this is what happens when a single political party entrenched for a quarter of a century in state government not only controls the level of fiscal power, not only controls the power of taxation, but also controls the power of prosecution. There is, in fact, an independent ethics commission, and it's populated entirely by the governor's appointees.
Wow.
So you can pretty much know what their opinion is about whether to investigate the governor or not. It's not really independent at all.
I was just regarding.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
No, that was agreeing. Pardon me.
Regarding how to help us, it's very simple. Go to our website, senatorwithguts.com, a URL you'll never be able to forget, even if you try, and sign up for our emails, make contributions, later sign our petitions. Take advantage of our opportunities that we provide to people in order to participate in government like we did this week with the TPP. And later on, help us in our campaign by making phone calls and canvassing and so on. It's very simple. We have over 100,000 contributors to the campaign already. I'm the only member of the House of Representatives, the only one who raised most of his campaign funds in 2014 from small contributors. And I hope to do it again this year, running for the Senate. I did it in 2012 as well, and that year I was the only one as well. And by the way, in case you're wondering, there's only one senator who can say that, and that is Bernie Sanders. Bernie is the only one among the 100 senators who raised most of his campaign funds from contributions of less than $200. So please help and be part of the organization, not just contribute, but help and participate in other ways. We're trying to build something really powerful and really big, and we need to do that because we have 20 million people to reach, 40 million eyeballs, and 40 million ears. So the only way that we can do that is with the help of an enormous number of people, or alternatively, I guess I could sell out, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Regarding the question of closed versus open primaries, I understand your point. Given your political leanings, I seriously invite you to join my party, the Democratic Party. It's not the answer to all questions, but it has a better track record, particularly in Florida, than the alternative does. The Republicans have been the party of corruption and big money now in Florida, as well as gerrymandering, ever since they took power when Jeb Bush was elected governor. And so please join our party. Don't feel like we need to open the primary process to independents and Republicans who could cause a lot of mischief.
We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We're talking with Congressman Alan Grayson for the hour, and he's taking your calls. More with Congressman Grayson right after this. And welcome back. Devon, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Blacksburg, Virginia. Devon, you're on the air with Congressman Alan Grayson.
Terrific. Thanks so much. Hi, Congressman Grayson. I see that you are on the Veterans and Military Personnel Committee, and I'm wondering if you've yet had a chance to read the article in the Huffington Post this morning, the military is burning awful explosive stuff out in the open. The short of it is that Army ammunition plants operated by BAE Systems, whose chairman of the board is Michael Chertoff, open burns hazardous waste in Appalachia. at the Holston plant in Tennessee, and at the Radford Army Ammunition plant in Southwest Virginia. My Congressman, Morgan Griffith, doesn't think the EPA needs to be concerned about, oversight of that activity. But read the Huffington Post article. Kids here are being poisoned for the profit of BAE Systems. Jason Chaffetz's committee heard testimony from Anthony Elkins on February 3rd of last year talking about this department within EPA of Homeland Security and that the OIG couldn't get in to investigate certain sites. Well, employees of EPA had been threatened by DOD. Read this article. It's time now.
Okay, Devon, let's find out what the congressman has to say.
Well, unfortunately, the government excludes from EPA regulation many, many government functions. By the way, just for what it's worth, I'm not on the Veterans Committee. I'm on the Science and Technology Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. But leaving that aside, your point is well taken. There's been tremendous tragedies over many years regarding the military taking action that has impaired other people's health and safety. There's a constant problem now regarding the military's use of Vieques in Puerto Rico. An island off the coast of Puerto Rico is a bombing range to the enormous detriment of the people who live there. Their cancer rates are sky high as a result of the government using munitions they won't even account for and not providing any health care to the people who are affected, I should say. I don't want to suggest they're using biological weapons. And this has been a problem through the decades. The original nuclear tests that were carried out in Nevada caused a great deal of mayhem in the local population and even people who happened to be visiting Nevada at the time.
Like John Wayne.
The government, yes, like John Wayne, and the government has never really accounted for that or been held accountable for it. There is no particular reason why we hold private industry to account through the EPA, and yet we let the military do whatever it feels like doing. And it's very unfortunate. It's a genuine problem, and it needs to be fixed.
What about this hybrid in the minute we have left before the break, where the government hires a private company, in this case this company run by Michael Chertoff, and then they behave in a way that they wouldn't be allowed to if they weren't under the umbrella of sovereign immunity?
Well, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. It used to be, for instance, that the Army Corps of Engineers knew how to build a bridge. Now the Army Corps of Engineers only knows how to hire someone to build a bridge. That is the state of our current government as a result of basically an entire generation of contracting out.
Right. This is the legacy of Reaganism, isn't it?
That's exactly right. There's an obsession with handing money over to private contractors rather than having the government maintain those skills inside. And in the war in Iraq, to give one example, we began the war in Iraq with the government fixing its own radios when they broke, their communication devices when they broke. And by the end, we hired Halliburton to take over that function. The people who were doing it for the Army ended up training the people who did it for Halliburton and then losing their jobs.
Amazing. Congressman Alan Grayson with us for the hour, taking your calls. More right after this. Welcome back. 20 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. Congressman Alan Grayson taking your calls for the hour. Jared in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jared, you're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Hello, Tom and Mr. Grayson. My question is, now, Mr. Grayson, if you're elected in the Senate, and hopefully you are, would you back any sort of bills or laws that would give funding to the so-called pre-Syrian army or back neocon attempts to push for U.S. troops in Syria or Iraq?
Well, my goodness, I originally ran in 2006 as an anti-war candidate. Long before that was, how should we say, popular. People would ask me at that time, when should the war in Iraq end? And I said consistently, it should have ended a long time ago. This was 3 years after the war began. I sued war profiteers in Iraq and won. That was my legal function before I was elected to Congress. And I am disturbed by the fact that we don't seem to be able to learn from any of our mistakes. I was extremely outspoken against attacking the Syrian army 2 years ago, did 7 national TV interviews in one day, did 40-plus media interviews in 3 days, and galvanized public opinion to prevent us from going to war against Syria the way the neocons wanted us to do. And I'm hoping that the president's record of managing to get through his administration without putting ground troops in yet more countries will be sustained by the next president and by me in the Senate. I don't think that it does much, if any, good. These are local problems that call out for local solutions. I have tried to get the local Sunni countries to deal with ISIS rather than us conducting a bombing campaign in which we drop $1 million bomb on a $10 tent. Those are bad numbers for us. Yeah. So I think the Free Syrian Army is non-existent. It's mythological. It's like a unicorn. I get regular briefings on such things, so I'm in a position to know these things. The Free Syrian Army was a concept, not a fighting force. And essentially, all of the material that we gave to them is now in the hands of ISIS or al-Nusra. So I think we have to get away from this idea that we can sort of conjure a fighting force into existence, and we've already wasted millions of dollars in a vain effort to do that by giving dentists and receptionists a 1-month vacation in Jordan to do so-called training, and then expecting them to go head-to-head with ISIS fighters. Yeah, it's silly. It's a completely unviable approach, and it comes from people who are intoxicated by power.
Wayne in Chelsea, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Alan Grayson.
Hi, Tom. Congressman Grayson. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling. We're represented here in the 7th District of Michigan by a Tea Party Republican. This time around, he has a strong Democratic challenger named Gretchen Driscoll, who currently serves in the Michigan State House. And I'm wondering what advice you would have for ordinary citizens who are seeking to replace their Tea Party representatives with more progressive alternatives.
Well, the things that we have to come to grips with more and more is the gerrymandering. The fact that we don't have the voters choosing the legislators anymore, rather we have the legislators choosing the voters in their district. And that makes it difficult. The deck is stacked in a very, very fundamental way. You know, Elizabeth Warren talks about the deck being stacked economically all the time. There needs to be more discussion of how the deck is stacked politically because it's just overwhelming. I think that you have to sort of come to grips with the idea that you're going to have to break away a large number of Republicans in districts like that. And the question is how to do it. In my answer in Florida is to run a populist campaign in which Republicans, and particularly senior Republicans in Florida, understand that their lives will be better if me or somebody like me gets elected. To run a classic bread and butter working person campaign, focusing on economic issues. And I would advise people to do the same. We've tried an alternative strategy over the years, which has turned into an utter failure. The alternative strategy, which is now completely discredited, is the idea that if you run like a Republican light, then somehow you'll fool enough voters into voting for you while you keep your Democrats. It just doesn't work that way. The Republicans are never fooled. They'd rather vote for a real Republican rather than a fake one, as Howard Dean pointed out a long time ago. And the Democrats completely lose interest. We had an example of that just a year ago in Florida. We had the current Republican governor challenged by the former Republican governor, who swooped in and got the Democratic nomination by telling everybody that that was a winning strategy. And, of course, he lost, even though our current Republican governor literally was the most unpopular governor in the entire country. You can't beat a Republican by being a Republican. And in your case and in other cases, I would have the candidate point out in very explicit terms to working people why their lives will be better if a Democrat is representing them in Congress, to retirees in particular why their lives will be better. It went virtually unnoticed that a number of different presidential candidates this year have said that they want to cut or privatize Social Security and Medicare. That's fatal to seniors, literally fatal. So I think if you make that argument in areas where at this point Roosevelt seniors are now Reagan seniors, if you make that argument to people who have seen no increase in their wages for decades, to appeal to their self-interest and make them understand that that's what politics is all about, that's the route to victory.
There you go. We've got 5 minutes of news here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be back with your calls for Congressman Alan Grayson right after this. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us, Congressman Alan Grayson, taking your calls for the hour. Congressman, we've got calls here from New Mexico, Delaware, Illinois, Washington State, Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin, etc. So shall we dig into it, jump into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Paul in Taos, New Mexico. Hey, Paul, you're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Alan, thank you so much. So, Alan, do you think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is banking on the Stockholm Syndrome kicking in with millennials and progressives if Hillary wins the primary by a patently dishonest and disingenuous process? And it seems to me that Debbie's strategy is only looking at the top of the ticket. I'm worried about down-ticket races.
Well, I assume you're referring to the rather controversial decision by the DNC to have originally only 6 sanctioned debates. And that was actually a collective decision. I mean, you can impute it to Debbie if you want. She is the head of the party, but that was not a decision that she made unilaterally. I think that I know that many people believe that the motivation was to help Hillary. They're entitled to that belief. There's, some evidence to support that belief. But you also need to consider the fact that everybody regarded the 2012 Republican debates, there were more than 24 of them, as a train wreck that really ended up hurting the Republican Party by conducting so many debates that ended up creating so many negative ads against the Republicans and all of their candidates. Reasonable people could have disagreed. As it turned out, when we started to do the debates, everyone realized, I think including Debbie, that the ratings were disappointing and that the debates were not galvanizing public attention the way that the Republican debates were. Possibly that's because Democrats are actually far more sensible and that our debates are not train wrecks. There's that reason, but also possibly because people simply wanted to see more. As a result of that, the party reversed course and ended up sanctioning what they have called forums. Forums are basically debates by a different name. There have been several already. A number of them have had all of the candidates, including Hillary, participate in them. Some of them have been televised, some of them have not. I think at this point, people have seen plenty of the candidates. It certainly wouldn't hurt to have more. But given the fact that the debates and the forums together have resulted in many, many, many hours of public exposure for the candidates, I think that the deal is done. I don't think that anybody who really wants to find out more about Hillary or Bernie or anybody else who's run hasn't had that opportunity to do so. So if people have a sense that there was some rigging that went on originally, I don't think that's the case anymore. Tom, what do you think?
I wouldn't totally disagree with that. My biggest concern was that the Republican debates serve as giant megaphones to trash Democrats and the administration. And if the Democratic debates are buried, basically the rebuttal or the response to those Republican debates does not get televised. And I think that runs the risk of basically polluting the undecided voter pool, which, given how badly our news does coverage these days, is much larger than it should be, if that makes any sense. So
yeah, I think that these are all valid points, and reasonable people can have reasonable opinions about them. I think that one of the reasons why the ratings have been low for the Democratic debates is because we don't trash each other the way the Republicans have been doing, at least not before this week.
Yeah, there's not as much theater, but putting them on the last Saturday before Christmas to go shopping while there's a NFL or Star Wars rolled out and there was a divisional playoff or something. It's just anyway. Let's move along, okay?
Right. These are not the droids you're looking for.
There you go, Rick in Bridgeville, Delaware. You're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Yeah, hi, Congressman. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
I just want to commend you on your Benghazi Committee ethics investigation and would like to know where that stands.
It's under consideration. We will not hear back until they've reached a conclusion about whether to press ahead with the investigation or not. So it's under consideration at this point. Just for those who may not be familiar with this, Kevin McCarthy, when he was in line to be Speaker of the House, admitted on national TV that the purpose of the Benghazi Committee had been to make Hillary's numbers drop. That's not an appropriate purpose for a federally mandated, taxpayer-funded investigation. That's not what we use our taxpayer dollars for, to hurt an opponent political candidate. So recognizing the ethical implications, I submitted a complaint against McCarthy and the head of the committee, and the following day, McCarthy dropped out of the Speaker's race. He clearly recognized that this is a problem. When he dropped out and he held a news conference to explain his decision, a reporter asked him whether the Benghazi Committee controversy had been the basis for the decision, and in a surprisingly honest answer, he said, "Well, it sure didn't help."
Wow!
Wow. We've already gotten.
You've altered the course of history, Congressman.
Maybe so, Tom.
Yeah.
But the fact is that the problem is still there because the committee's still there. It's gone on longer now than the 9/11 committee went on, and there's still the possibility that it will be used to try to alter the outcome of the Democratic presidential campaign in an unfair way, using taxpayer dollars to tip the scales against one candidate. I have read every single classified document regarding Benghazi. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I have free access to that information. It took me a long time, but I went into the bowels of the Capitol, in the place where we keep the secure information, and I read every single cable and email and so on. It's pretty clear to me that Hillary did nothing wrong. And wherever you stand concerning the presidential nomination, it's not fair for the Republicans to use their improper and unjustifiable control of the House of Representatives, which they attain through gerrymandering and dirty money, and parlay that into determining who the Democratic presidential candidate might be.
Amen. Dean in Fernandina Beach, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Alan Grayson.
Yes, good morning, Tom. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
I was just calling to inquire about the bill you submitted about giving seniors a Social Security raise. I'm living on Social Security. I've called my representative several times, Crenshaw in North Florida, and I'm just getting a runaround from his office. I was just wondering what the status is.
Well, I'm actually encouraged, and I'll tell you that this is our number one legislative priority. It is tragic that seniors got no cost of living increase. The checks are in the mail right now, and people are seeing that they're getting the same amount of money they got last year, even though everyone recognizes that the cost of living for seniors has gone up. The problem is that we calculate the cost of living adjustment in a way that's not fair to seniors. We do it on the basis of the cost of living for people who work. Now, seniors spend less on gasoline than people who work. The price of gasoline has gone down this year. They spend less on transportation in general. They spend less on clothing. They spend more on health care. In fact, they spend much more on health care, even though they have Medicare coverage. The average senior spends twice as much on health care as people under the age of 65. If you're over 70, you spend 3 times as much on health care. But we continue, and we have continued for 40 years now, calculating the cost of living adjustment not based upon how seniors spend their money, but based upon how workers spend their money. It's just basically a glitch in the system. I asked the Congressional Research Service many, many months ago when I saw the numbers coming in and coming in very low for the cost of living adjustment. I asked the Congressional Research Service, what should the adjustment be if you calculate it based upon how seniors spend their money? And they came back and told me 2.9%. Not zero, but 2.9%. Well, that's an extra $400 for every senior in the entire country who gets Social Security. So I put in a bill called the Seniors Deserve a Raise Act to give seniors the 2.9% that they deserve. And that, by the way, comes to $25 billion this year. The 2.9% they deserve, and to fix the problem in the future by calculating the cost of living adjustment based upon the consumer price index for the elderly rather than the consumer price index for workers. We have over 70 co-sponsors for that bill. I'd like to see more Republicans like Anders participate. I know he's a good person with a good heart, and he needs to do more to help seniors, including himself. He's a senior. And I'm hoping that we can get to the point where we can push this bill forward. When the Democrats had control of the House and the Senate, and this happened before, 5 years ago, seniors did get a cost of living adjustment that year. And now with the Republicans in charge, we haven't done that. But I'm going to continue to fight hard for that, whether I'm in the House or the Senate. This is a problem that needs to be solved. The system is broken, and it's very unfair to seniors.
Yeah, Congressman, we have about 25 seconds before the break. Do you think that there's any possibility of anything like this happening as long as the Republicans control the House and Senate?
Yes, I do actually. This is a real flashpoint with seniors. I think that if we continue to get coverage in the media about this problem and it gets more visibility, then I think that the Republicans might feel they've been backed into a corner and they'll have to do something.
That would be very good news. Congressman Alan Grayson with us, representing Florida's 9th District. Grayson.house.gov is his official website. His campaign website for his Senate run is senatorwithguts.com. We'll be back with more of Congressman Grayson. Your questions for Congressman Grayson right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with your questions for Congressman Grayson in just a second. And welcome back. Siri in Bluntsville, Alabama, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish TV network. You are on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Yes, Congressman Grayson and Tom, hello.
Hi.
We know that Bernie has it right about Wall Street. He's hit it with a nail on the head. But explain to the American people why our system is a fiat system, why we are in debt. We've been in debt since Ronald Reagan. There's not been, it's Republicans, the debt ceiling. Let's crash. Let's break them down. We're $19 trillion in debt. How do we get out of it under this fiat system? Making money out of nothing. In 1971, Nixon went off the gold standard. So how do we? And then like countries like China can pay off our debt. Or a billionaire, and then we have to produce more money to keep it going. So how do we get out of this fiat system? That's what I want you to explain to the American people. Thank you.
Congressman?
Yeah, just by way of background, when people use the term fiat system, they're usually referring to the fact that our currency is not backed by anything other than our currency. At one time, it was backed by gold. You could exchange $35 for 1 ounce of gold. And that was true in many other countries around the world. Today, there is no country that ties its currency to the value of gold any longer. So every currency in the world is what the caller referred to as a fiat system at this point. The reason for that is that the primary reason for that is that when the gold standard was in effect, large movements of gold would have sometimes devastating effects on the economic activity of the country. So if the gold supply went down because people moved gold out of the country, the economic activity went down since gold was, in essence, the money that was used in the country. There's a famous economic formula, PQ equals MV, which means that assuming the velocity of money remains the same, the monetary supply is directly proportionate to the GNP of the country, the gross national product of the country. And so if you are tied directly to gold, then you're at the mercy of movements of gold into and out of the country. Sometimes it's good. I mean, Spanish colonial prosperity was based upon the fact they took gold out of Latin America in their colonies and moved it to Spain, and that fueled their economy for many, many years. On the other hand, the crashes that we had, particularly the ones in the late 1800s in the United States, most people would say were directly a function of the fact that we were on the gold standard. With regard to our debt, the troublesome element of our debt is not the money that we owe to ourselves. I mean, we could pay that off through progressive taxation in short order. We were heading in that direction when President Clinton was president. We were only 7 years away from paying off the entire national debt. The troublesome element right now is not the money we owe to ourselves, it's the money that we owe to foreigners. That's $11 trillion. It's growing at $500 billion each year. It's growing at $1 billion and more each day. We discussed that in detail at my website, tradetreachery.com, and that's a problem with a solution. Among other potential solutions is the Warren Buffett solution. He has proposed that we simply decide ahead of time what we will allow to be imported into the United States in the following year. It will be roughly equal to our exports. We issue licenses for those imports, and if you don't have a license, you can't have access to the richest market in the entire world. That would eliminate our trade deficit in short order. Over time, we could pay down the trade debt, and that seems like an excellent idea to many people.
Agreed. Congressman Alan Grayson, we'll be right back. Ten minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Congressman Alan Grayson taking your calls for the hour. And let's see here. Rob in Phoenix, Arizona, listening on KPHX. You are on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I basically have a solution, or at least an idea, to help curb some of the gun control problems we have. Basically, it is to penalize the irresponsible transfer of weapons. Meaning this. Basically, what you do is just create a law that says if a gun is found in a crime, and then that's traced to some person who legally purchased it, but then later on transferred it, but did not do a background check, you basically fine that person like $50,000 for that irresponsible transfer. So basically, build laws that penalize irresponsible transfer of weapons. You don't have to make it mandatory to do a background check, but it should be a great penalty if that gun shows up in a crime for not doing so. Basically, just take it down.
Yeah. So let's get Congressman Grayson's thoughts on this. Thanks, Rob.
Well, of course, we already have a law that requires background checks in most circumstances. The problem is that there are loopholes involving internet sales and loopholes involving private sales and loopholes involving gun shows. I don't pretend to be an expert in this area, but it seems to me that if you only hold people accountable for violating those laws if their weapon is used in a crime later on, you're being too easy on the people who violate those laws. I think everybody who violates those laws should be punished. And in fact, almost everybody agrees that those laws should be truly universal background checks without any loopholes at all. If you do look at the polling, close to 90% of Republicans support universal background checks with no exceptions. Over 90% of the Democrats support universal background checks. Over 90% of NRA members, believe it or not, support universal background checks. And it really is in nobody's interest except conceivably the gun manufacturers to have those loopholes there. So I think your idea is worthwhile, but I don't want to create a sort of a lottery in terms of who we punish for gun sales based upon the eventual use of the weapon. I'd rather see all the loopholes eliminated, and I support and co-sponsor legislation to do exactly that.
Okay. Betsy in Minneapolis, Minnesota, listening on KTNF, AM 950. You're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call. Tom, thank you for all you do. And Congressman Grayson, Really appreciate you. What I would like to say just about Social Security is, how come we can't remove the cap, the income cap? Why is it that the very, very, very wealthy don't have to pay 100% of what they earn, or received from capital gains would be ideal also? Thanks. I'll let you answer.
Well, interestingly enough, you're referring to a bill. It's that I usually refer to as scrap the cap, a bill that I've introduced in Congress. In fact, I have the only bill in Congress that scraps the cap in a way that would make Social Security solvent forever. Just by way of background, up to roughly a little bit less than $120,000, you pay Social Security taxes on your income. For every dollar you make beyond $120,000, a little less than $120,000 each year, you don't pay any taxes at all. So LeBron James pays Social Security taxes for the first quarter of his first game, a little bit of the second quarter, and then for the rest of the game, he doesn't pay any Social Security taxes, doesn't pay any taxes for the subsequent 81 games or any games that he plays in the playoffs. And that's a crazy system. It doesn't make any sense. LeBron is eligible for Social Security just like everybody else when he hit 65 years old. So that cap is something that should be scrapped, and it's important to do so because right now the system is solvent for roughly 20-plus years to go. But if you simply scrap the cap in the way that the Grayson bill does so, and there's a particular way you have to do it, if you scrap the cap, you make the system solvent forever and ever and ever. And that's the only way to do it, according to the Social Security Administration. They've done a number of studies of a number of different bills. Mine is the only bill that does it and does it right. So I agree with you. It's unfair. If we're going to have everybody benefit from the system, then everybody should pay into the system as long as they work and they have an income.
Michael in Westerville, Ohio, listening on Sirius XM. You're on the air with Congressman Grayson.
Hello, Tom and Congressman Grayson. Congratulations on being reelected and best wishes for your run for the Senate. I'm going to be in Orlando in 2 weeks, attending and participating in a conference, an interfaith conference on climate change. And the premise I'm going to be talking about is that if we support the Move to Amend project to eliminate corporate personhood and money as speech, we will then, as the people with our elected representatives, be able to introduce laws and regulations that will oblige the fossil fuel industry and other polluters to change their ways. Today, there's a lot of pressure to support revocation of Citizens United. I wondered what you believe, since you are not dependent on super PACs, regarding the value of revoking Citizens United, which just affects money for elections, and revoking corporate personhood and money as speech.
Great.
Gets rid of the power completely.
Congressman Grayson, we have just about a minute before the end of the hour.
Well, as Tom has heard me say before, I was actually in the courtroom when that was decided. I was the only elected official other than Mitch McConnell, who was sitting 2 seats to my left and chortling. I think he was chortling. He was gurgling, chortling, whatever Mitch does when he's happy.
Turtling
out of some orifice. I recognized immediately what the problem was. I had already introduced 4 bills called our Save Democracy platform before the decision even came down, because I had a bad feeling about that. And afterward introduced 4 more. 3 of those 8 bills were incorporated in what was called the Disclose Act, which passed the House and was filibustered in the Senate. And I was on TV that night on MSNBC on Keith Olbermann's show at 8 p.m. Saying that if we do nothing, you could kiss this country goodbye. So far, we've done nothing. In fact, I said that night in Olbermann's interview that to be fair about this, you ought to see congressmen and senators wearing corporate logos because that's who owns them. And now it seems like a California businessman has picked up on my suggestion these several years later. But it's a horrible problem. And the only reason why I can do what I do, the only reason why I've passed more amendments, good, solid, progressive amendments, than any other member of Congress, is because the people are behind me. And I have over 100,000 people who've come to Senator with Guts and made contributions to my campaign. I'm unbought, I'm unbossed, and it shows that there is an alternative to our corrupt existing system.
That's great. Congressman Alan Grayson, thanks so much for being with us today for this hour.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. And grayson.house.gov, tradetreachery.com, senatorwithguts.com. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.